22 children and 6 adults killed in a coach accident in Switzerland. The bus was carrying Belgian and Dutch children home from a school ski trip to the Swiss Alps. It crashed into the wall of a mountain tunnel. Dozens more were injured.
This is the ITV News at 6:30 with Mary Nightingale and Mark Austin.
All the dead are thought to be from Belgium. The Belgian Prime Minister has called it a black day for the whole country. Relatives of the victims have been flown to Switzerland with some unsure of the fate of their children. Also tonight, our closest friend and deepest ally, Obama's tribute to David Cameron as the two leaders wrestle with Afghanistan.
We're off to the Paralympics in 2012! Yay!
Paralympic call-up. The 7/7 survivor set to represent Great Britain at this summer's Games.
And welcome to Britain's newest city with just 3,000 residents and 12 shops. But where is it?
Good evening. The distraught parents of the Belgian school children on board the coach which crashed in Switzerland are facing a terrible uncertainty tonight. More than 20 hours after the accident, many of them still don't know whether their child is among the dozens injured or one of the 22 who died.
The children, aged 11 and 12, were on their way home from a skiing holiday. They were returning from the Swiss Alps to Belgium when the coach crashed into the wall of a mountain tunnel near Sierre last night. Our Europe editor James Mates reports from Switzerland.
The wreckage of the coach was pulled slowly away this morning, giving the world outside the tunnel its first view of the violence of the crash that took 22 young lives late last night. 6 adults with them also died, though perhaps the most surprising thing is that 24 children did somehow come out of this carnage, injured but alive. What happened yesterday evening in good weather and on a well-maintained road is not yet known. No other vehicle, it seems, was involved, but somehow, as it entered this tunnel, the coach came off the road and crashed head-on into a concrete wall. Both drivers were killed. Most of the dead were at the front of the coach, so it's possible that no one who saw what happened has survived. At 2 small towns in northern Belgium, they woke to the news of the tragedy this morning. Parents rushing towards schools where students were being told that many of their classmates were not coming back. For families, the agony was made much, much worse by uncertainty. They knew 22 are dead and 24 have survived, but not which ones.
This kind van mijn dochter.
It's my granddaughter, says this woman. All I know at this stage is that she was on the bus. With all the adults dead and many 12-year-olds not carrying identity, rescuers and doctors in Switzerland were able to tell authorities in Belgium very little.
We cannot say at this moment who is a victim and who is not. We don't have that names already.
There were no classes at either of the 2 schools today, but at the St. Lamberta school in the small town of Haberle, those who would not see many of their friends again spent the morning making simple tributes to hang on the school gates. Tragedy on this scale would rip the heart from any school, any community. To the authorities in Switzerland lies the task of tending the injured and clearing the wreckage. That and trying to establish what could have caused an accident that still has no apparent explanation.
Well, James is outside one of the hospitals where the injured are being treated. James, this is a terrible, terrible story. What are the Swiss authorities saying about what may have caused this crash?
Well, what they are able to tell us is what they think didn't cause it. They have very little idea actually what did. We know that the weather was good, that the road was dry. We know they're pretty sure that the coach was not speeding. The driver was well rested. This at the very beginning of what was going to be a long drive back to Belgium. So all those elements we know didn't happen. They may find clues in that wreckage as to exactly what did, but it's perfectly possible, for some of the reasons I was explaining in the report there, with the absence of eyewitnesses, that they may simply never know. It may just be one of those totally unexplained accidents. As for the victims, well, 2 remain unidentified. The rest they have now managed to identify. Many of the families are here already. We know that 3 of the children are still in comas. Others of the 24 are still, we know, are very badly injured. The Belgian Prime Minister is visiting, and his country has declared a national day of mourning.
James Mates in Switzerland, thank you.
With public support for the war in Afghanistan plummeting here and in America, David Cameron and President Obama said today there would be no early withdrawal of troops. They're under increasing pressure to act after the massacre of 16 Afghan civilians by an American soldier and the deaths of 6 British soldiers last week.
The 2 leaders stood side by side at the White House and said progress is being made and that the mission will be completed. From Washington, our correspondent Robert Moore.
Even the traditional arrival ceremony was designed as a reward for an ally that is fighting shoulder to shoulder with America in Afghanistan, and a reward for a partner in so many other global crises. This is not technically a state visit, but the Americans are making it appear like one. The president unable to resist a reference to those British troops who set fire to the White House in 1812.
They made quite an impression. They really lit up the place.
The president and the prime minister then got down to business. Their top priority after a calamitous week in Afghanistan is to steady nerves and resist calls for a precipitous withdrawal that would jeopardize gains achieved at such cost.
The President of the United States, accompanied by the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
At a news conference on the South Lawn, both leaders insisted they would not cut and run after a decade of fighting.
But we will not give up on this mission, because Afghanistan must never again be a safe haven for Al-Qaeda to launch attacks against us.
I think the vast majority of the American people and British understand why we went there. There is a reason why Al-Qaeda is on its heels and has been decimated. There's a reason why Osama bin Laden and his lieutenants are not in a position to be able to execute plots against the United States or Great Britain.
But on Syria, there was a sense of real frustration, with both leaders knowing there are few diplomatic or military options available.
But we should be clear. What we want is the quickest way to stop the killing. That is through transition rather than revolution or civil war. But if Assad continues, then civil war or revolution is the inevitable consequence. So we will work with anyone who is ready to build a stable, inclusive and democratic Syria for all Syrians.
But with Syria and Iran defying international pressure, with the Taliban on the offensive, the challenges for President Obama and the Prime Minister appear immense. The personal warmth on display here all day is certainly genuine. The question is, what can that friendship achieve? Can there be progress on an Afghan withdrawal? Can there be a diplomatic breakthrough on Iran and Syria? That will be the test. Mr. Cameron's trip to Washington is being judged a success. Certainly on the big foreign policy questions, the President and the Prime Minister share a similar outlook, even if they are struggling to find those solutions. Robert Moore, ITV News, at the White House.
Let's join our political editor, Tom Bradby, who's at the White House. Tom, no startling policy announcements then, but President Obama does seem to be making quite a fuss of David Cameron.
Mark, even by the standards of these things, he has laid on the love with an absolute trowel. It's quite hard to work out exactly why that is. I think their personal chemistry is good. It didn't strike me as kind of out of the ordinary or amazing. And I think possibly what it is that the White House looks back to the early days, feels that it was a bit too cool to all of us. I think they don't necessarily value us that much as a military ally, but certainly diplomatically in places like Afghanistan, as Robert was saying, they absolutely do. So I think this is a little bit of correction or overcorrection, however you want to look at it, to sort of say, OK, we understand your soldiers are dying alongside our soldiers and we really do value you. So that's why I think it's been kind of so up there in terms of the reception. As you say, not massive policy changes, but I think what we will see when we look back on this is that they probably did hammer through a lot of big big issues like Syria here, where clearly there has been some talk about, well, what more could you do? I think David Cameron probably does want to go a bit further, a bit faster. Barack Obama seems very cautious, but I think they'll certainly have talked through the options in quite a substantial way.
All right, Tom, thank you very much indeed.
Now, a man who lived with the body of his dead father for nearly 5 months while claiming his benefits has been jailed for 3 years. Christopher Blackburn pocketed nearly £1,900 of income support payments. The police found his father's body at their home in Penwortham, Lancashire, last March.
And police investigating the death of a toddler have arrested a man on suspicion of murder. 2-year-old Roxy Archer apparently fell down the stairs at a home in Greater Manchester. She died in hospital.
Now, there are big changes in store for tens of thousands of employees at Tesco. They're going to have to work for 2 years longer before they can draw their full pension. Britain's biggest private sector employer is the first to raise the retirement age from 65 to 67. Well, I'm joined by our business editor, Laura Koonsberg. Now, this is a big change for Tesco, obviously, but it also could be a big change for other companies too, couldn't it?
It certainly could. All 170,000 of Tesco's staff will be getting a letter in the post that spells out exactly what it will mean for them. If they're very near retirement, there probably won't be very much of a change. If they're at the beginning of their career, they could have to put in 2 years extra to get the full amount that they would have otherwise got at 65. Tesco is, though, the first to step into this territory, matching the public sector, where there's been an almighty row with the government trying to raise the retirement age to 67. Now, talking to other big employers today, like Sainsbury's, Morrison's, the Royal Bank of Scotland, for now, they say they are not looking at changing the retirement age. But industry insiders have said to me they are pretty convinced that some companies are looking at this as a way out of the situation. It's great news that we all are living longer. Nobody's going to say that's a bad thing. But if we want to all have a comfortable retirement, that means we're either going to have to work longer or we're going to get less back from our employer. And Tesco believes in wanting to continue providing a good, generous pension. Many employers have opted out of that already, but they think that this could be the answer to provide a decent retirement, but that does come at a cost, a few extra hours over a couple of extra years.
All right. Thank you, Laura.
Still to come, from tragedy to triumph, the 7/7 London bomb survivor on the verge of representing Great Britain at this summer's Paralympics.
And the tiny town given city status to celebrate the Queen's Diamond Jubilee.
When people come, they'll get a nice surprise. Well, it's a very small city, but a very busy road.
You can find out where it is, along with the rest of the day's news, when we come back. Join us then.
Welcome back. There's been another increase in the number of people who are out of work and claiming benefits. Unemployment is now at a near 17-year high. Between last November and January, the jobless total rose by 28,000 to 2.67 million. In the final 3 months of last year, the number of people employed in the public sector fell by 37,000.
But the numbers employed in the private sector rose by 45,000. So, here's the Coalition's claim that the private sector will create jobs to soak up losses in the public sector actually working. Our consumer editor Chris Joy reports from Newcastle, where 1 in 4 people works in the public sector.
This city has reinvented itself to survive for centuries. Now in the grip of downturn, it must transform again. Iburn Beggan is on the front line of that change. A former council employee, she's now hoping her skills can migrate to a private firm.
Organisation skills, communication skills and IT skills, they're all transferable to be able to work in a private sector.
She's applied for around 100 jobs and had just 5 interviews. The shift away from public service jobs hits women hardest. 65% of the sector's employees are female.
Well, normally I've looked for admin or retail.
But such vacancies, traditionally largely filled by women, are in most demand. Almost a quarter of the workforce, 273,000 people, are in the public sector in this region. As those posts now go, can private firms fill the gap? So what have we got here?
Here we've got the premium wet food, premium soft dog feed that we sell a lot of.
Judith Fowler is a former civil servant who has made the transition into the commercial sector.
It's about looking for opportunities, which when you're in the public sector, it's more process driven and you're not really encouraged to think for yourself so much in some cases. But I think if people are given a little bit of help, they can see opportunities, and there's a lot of transferable skills as well, actually.
It's a city determined to bridge between the old economy and a rebalanced workforce. But with more job losses ahead, it will be a tough crossing. Chris Choi, ITV News.
UK Coal says it is considering closing the country's biggest coal mine. The group wants to close Daw Mill near Coventry by early 2014. 800 jobs could be lost if the plans are given the go-ahead.
And former News of the World chief reporter Neville Thurlbeck was rearrested today by police investigating phone hacking. He's being questioned on suspicion of witness intimidation and encouraging or assisting an offence.
There were tears of joy and inspirational words today from Martine Wright, who lost both of her legs in the 7/7 London bombings. On hearing the news that her sitting volleyball team had made it through to the Paralympic Games, she told Romilly Weeks she wants to create new dreams from something so negative, and she wants to make her family proud.
We've just heard back from them, and they have granted you, the team, the host nation spot at London 2012.
Yeah! Brilliant! Brilliant! Oh
Martine Wright has every reason to cheer. Her sitting volleyball team has just earned its place in the London Paralympics, a first for Great Britain, and for Martine, a high point in a quite extraordinary story. 6 years ago, Martine knew nothing about sitting volleyball, but that was before she lost both her legs in the 7/7 bombings.
If you said to me 10 years ago, on the shoulder and went, Martine, by the way, you're going to, become an elite sportswoman who's going to maybe take part in the pinnacle of all pinnacle events, the Olympics, the Paralympics, I would have thought you were absolutely mad.
7th of July 2005, one of the bombs targeting the London transport network exploded almost next to Martine. She was one of the most seriously injured survivors.
I've always said I was a lucky one that day. I was a real lucky one, and it was awful to be part of that awful day, but I was lucky because I survived, and to be able to create new dreams from something so negative,
2, 3, The individual members of the team will be selected in June. What would competing mean for Martine?
Just, the idea of making, my family really proud, and just doing it. This is a reality that I could be going back to London.
Romilly Weeks, ITV News.
Our main story once again tonight, the uncertainty faced by Belgian parents whose children were on board the coach which crashed in Switzerland.
Some of them don't know if their child is one of the 22 who died when the coach hit a concrete wall in a tunnel.
And finally, a tiny Welsh town with a population of 3,500, 3 restaurants and 6 pubs was given the Royal Seal of Approval today when the Queen bestowed on it the honour of becoming a city to mark her Diamond Jubilee.
Chelmsford in Essex, Perth in Perthshire were also made cities, along with, wait for it, St Asaph in Denbighshire. From there, Emma Murphy has our report.
It's not exactly Spaghetti Junction, and this is the city centre. But St Asaph, deep in the North Wales countryside, isn't exactly your traditional city. With only a dozen shops, 3 restaurants and a population of just over 3,000, it feels a little on the small side. However, those who fought for the status say its size is actually its charm.
So what's St Asaph, little St Asaph, got to offer?
A place where you can come and have a relaxing day with lovely river walks and safe areas for the children to play.
And what does it mean to you now to finally be a city?
It's a very proud moment both for myself and everybody that lives in St Asaph. We waited a long time for it.
Because it has a cathedral, some had tried to claim St Asaph was already a city, so official recognition has delighted many.
It's absolutely wonderful for the town, the area, everything.
just great.
Nice place. It's quite a small city, but it's a lovely city.
It is.
Isn't it?
Cracking city to be in.
Beautiful.
What else would you like in your city?
Nice big club would be quite nice, wouldn't it?
Nice club would be
nice
lovely.
Big club. Some nice, few more ladies.
Bigger bookies would be nice.
There's no doubt people here are delighted by their new status. There is a little bit of concern that when visitors come, they'll be asking where the city centre is, when they stood in the middle of it.
St Asaph may be tiny, but in this tiny city there is now an awful lot of Welsh.